The revolution began anew in 1895 under the visionary leadership of José Martí. A Cuban poet and journalist living in New York, Martí visited Cuban communities across the United States to promote and raise funds for Cuban independence. His ideas reshaped Cuba Libre.
Martí realizes that the weakness of the previous attempt at independence was that Cuba was not united. It was divided by class, it was divided by race, and so he decides to mobilize the exiled community and to tell them that the cause of Cuba is one of all Cubans wherever they are.
Either the Republic is founded upon the integral character of every one of its sons, or the Republic is not worth one of our mother's tears, or a single drop of our hero's blood. Will we fear the Negro? The black man has drawn his noble body to its full height and is becoming a solid column for his native liberties. Others may fear him. I love him. José Martí.
He basically argues that black Cubans and white Cubans had come together, that going back to the 10 Years' War, their blood had joined in the fields of battle, and that because of that history, race had been superseded, it had been transcended. It no longer divided Cubans, which for the 1890s, it's a remarkable statement.
In April 1895, Martí joined 60-year-old General Máximo Gómez in the Dominican Republic. They hitched a ride aboard a German banana boat, then rode to the rocky shores of southeast Cuba to lead the rebellion. The travelers hacked their way through dense jungle to make contact with insurgent forces.
Martí was radiant with pride and satisfaction because he was able to hold his own in all this with 5 rugged men, General Máximo Gómez.
A month later, despite warnings from General Gómez, Martí rode ahead of his troops and was killed in his first battle. Cuban insurgents gathered strength from his martyrdom. They reclaimed the eastern provinces that they had occupied during the 10 Years' War. Gómez now knew that the insurrection against Spain would only succeed if taken to Cuba's wealthiest provinces. Gómez pushed westward. His objective, Havana.
All plantations shall be totally destroyed, their cane and outbuildings burned. Laborers who shall aid the sugar factories shall be considered traitors to their country and shall be shot. General Máximo Gómez.
A new Spanish colonial governor, General Valeriano Weyler, was sent to Havana to stop General Gómez. Weyler faced a rebel army that operated with the support of peasant farmers. He forcibly reconcentrated the rural population.
The aim of the policy is to gather people not involved in the army who were living in the countryside and put them into towns where their services would not be available to the Cuban rebels. A lot of people go into these towns, and the towns are notoriously like concentration camps. Nobody really knows how many people died, but they range from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands.
Images of Weyler's camps were supplied to U.S. newspapers by rebel sympathizers in New York.
The Americans needed somebody to personify the perfidious Spanish. And they couldn't look to the King of Spain at this time, Alfonso XIII, because he was a 14-year-old kid. His mother, who was the Queen Regent, was an Austrian princess, not very Spanish. But here was this Weyler.
General Weyler was the perfect villain. He was portrayed brutally in cartoons and editorials and news stories as a savage, inhumane brute, as the most bloodthirsty butcher that had ever entered this hemisphere.
Weyler is a fiendish despot, a brute, a devastator of haciendas, pitiless, cold, an exterminator of men. There is nothing to prevent his carnal brain from inventing torture and infamies of bloody debauchery. The New York Journal, February 1896.
The journal's new editor was William Randolph Hearst, the 33-year-old son of a successful California gold miner. Hearst had purchased the failing journal in 1895. He quickly made it the most influential newspaper in New York.
Everyone expected he would just be another rich man's son. He was a rich man's son. He was also one of the most brilliant newspapermen this country has ever seen. I think Hearst truly, truly believed that he could establish himself as a power not only in New York and in journalistic circles, but maybe nationally, if he could play the Cuba story the way he wanted to play it.
I think Hearst took up the Cuban independence movement as a jingoistic way to bring America together. We were a nation in that period that was at each other's throats. North was still angry at South. Populist farmers didn't like East Coast bankers. We had economic depression, which created a panic, and Hearst saw that the way to pull everybody together was with some war.
You go to war, it pulls the country together, and it gets everybody fascinated. And we all glue to the tube nowadays to watch CNN if the war is coming on. Well, they got the Hearst papers.
U.S. businessmen saw war as a threat to their investments in Cuba and to economic recovery at home. Their concerns were shared by Republican President-elect William McKinley. As governor of Ohio, McKinley had pushed for a stronger tariff to restore the nation's prosperity. He declared his stance on Cuba in his 1897 inaugural address.
We must avoid the temptation of territorial aggression. War should never be entered upon until every agency of peace has failed.
McKinley served as a 19-year-old sergeant during the Battle of Antietam in 1862.
He was the last American president to have served in the Civil War, and he knew what war was like. At one point he said, "I've been through one war. I've seen the bodies stacked like cordwood, and I don't want to go through that sort of thing again."
I should welcome almost any war, for I think this country needs one. If we lose our virile, manly qualities and sink into a nation of mere hucksters, then we shall indeed reach a condition worse than that of the ancient civilizations in the years of their decay. Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Theodore Roosevelt.
From his boxing days at Harvard to his term as New York City's police commissioner, Theodore Roosevelt was a fighter. Unlike President McKinley, Roosevelt advocated a war with Spain.
I think this reflected the fact that Roosevelt's generation had not fought a war. The generation of its parents had fought the Civil War and demonstrated its bravery and its valor then. Roosevelt's generation still had to prove its worth.
It's something that I feel myself. I was born in 1935, and I grew up listening to World War II stories, and I feel cheated that I wasn't a part of that.